Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of OnReviewCast. I'm your host Ash, and today we're going to be looking at the Emmy Award-winning series known as Barry. This episode of One at the Podcast, brand spanking new, so I'm so excited to talk about this, delve deep into what Barry's all about. People have been raving about it, so let's, without further ado, check out season 1 of Barry on review.
H.B.O. series, Barry, season 1.
Just to get started, I think that not a lot of people are familiar with the show, that we should definitely, let's get people kind of like up to speed with like what exactly we're delving into here. Because this show is, it's something. It's honestly, it's been great. It's been such a great, a great ride. I know you guys, some of you out there don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's been so great. And I'm surprised more people don't necessarily know about this, or don't know exactly or haven't necessarily heard of this, but it's such a good show. And something that we're going to try to do and try to adopt around here is every episode of every new season, that everything that we review, we're going to basically reread a synopsis of everything, so you guys know exactly what we're talking about and what show we can actually, what we're actually going for, and what show we're actually taking a look at, and what we're seeing, what we're delving into exactly, and so you guys know what I'm talking about. So this is going to be great. So just going to read a little synopsis here for exactly what Barry basically is, and can't recommend the show enough. It's really, really great, and this is what it is. Disillusioned at the thought of taking down another mark, depressed low-level hitman Barry Berkman seeks a way out. When the Midwesterner reluctantly travels to Los Angeles to execute a hit on an actor who's been betting a mobster's wife, little does Barry know that the City of Angels may be his sanctuary. He follows the target into an acting class and ends up instantly drawn to the community of eager hopefuls, especially the dedicated student Sally, who becomes an object of his affection. While Barry wants to start a new life as an actor, his handler Fuchs has other ideas, and the hitman's criminal past just won't let him walk away so easily. And that's season 1 of basically a read of that's basically dedicated for the summary of basically what happens. And it's just, like I said, it's a ride. It's such a ride. So the synopsis says, it starts off with low-level hitman basically coming to Los Angeles and taking care of this stuff. And the hitman is actually played by, if you guys are fans of SNL at all, or I can't remember. I don't think I know any other works that he's basically done. But if you guys are a fan, any kind of fans of SNL, Bill Harder plays Barry Berkman, the hitman in question, and they have all these. The cast is awesome, by the way. It's they have him, the guy from SNL, and they have if you guys are any fans of Gotham, they have Zaz on there, which his performance is very Zaz-like. I don't know how else to basically explain it. His performance is very Zaz-like, and it's very akin to essentially that very Zaz energy. And like I said, this description is read it's a very dark comedy. So it's so masterfully crafted in a way where it balances comedy or that dark comedy side with the actual driving force, pushing forward of drama and seriousness. The Sally Reed, the other girl I just talked about, his love interest is actually played by Sarah Goldberg, another acclaimed actress, and Fuchs is played by Stephen Root. And like I said, the entire, if you think about it, or if you're thinking about picking up the show, the entire thing is centered around essentially Victor Zsasz energy. If you've seen Gotham, that's the only way to really explain this. Anthony Carrigan, who plays NoHo Hank, who's one of the gangsters, he does such a good job with this, alongside with Bill Harder. But season one, episode 1, like how it says, it starts off with him going to Los Angeles, and he's got to take out this guy that's one of the mobsters that's sleeping with another guy's wife or whatever it is. And the thing is, it just devolves into so much from there. It just goes and goes and goes and goes from that point on. And it's crazy. I couldn't recommend it enough, honestly. And it's taken from a perspective of where he has been doing, he's a hitman. He's been in this dark thing for so very long, and he's trying to break away from that. So at this point in the podcast, I think what we're going to do is we're going to delve deep into the season dissection, and spoilers ahead. If you are planning on watching Barry, go ahead, watch Barry, come back, listen to this podcast. It's going to be very spoiler heavy, at least for season 1. We'll try to keep it to season 1. We'll do the best we can, but the best that I can. The best that I can. And moving forward in the shows, I'll try to keep if I say we're going to do season 1, it's going to be season 1, season 2, season 2. We'll try to cap that as best as possible. But in season 1, he goes to Los Angeles, and basically he meets up with NoHo Hank, who is basically the Victor Zsasz, and another mobster, and I can't quite remember his name. I'm looking. I can't remember his name. But basically, he meets these two gangsters, and they tell him about the hit. And the first time, NoHo Hank is bringing that Victor Zsasz energy of it's fine, everything is pleasant. I'm a very murderous gangster, and it is like a little Russian accent. It's no, everything is fine. It's not exactly like this, but it's more. I can't exactly do it the way he does it, but he's everything is fine. We just need to take care of this guy. And they sit down for this meeting, and he's you can. This is the guy that we need you to kill, and we need you to kill him because of this reason. And the reason, again, like I explained before, is because he's sleeping with the guy's wife. But NoHo Hank starts playing. He's sleeping with the other gangster's wife. But NoHo Hank starts playing the video of him actually cheating. So the guy is actually fucking the guy's wife, and the guy that's getting basically just a cuckold. He's sitting there, and he's just getting angry, and then NoHo Hank is he's just pointing at them basically fucking and he's kind of yeah, this is why we basically need you to take him out. And it's kind of why would you why would you play that? And rightfully so, the gangster who's getting cheated on, he just stands up, he's no, I don't want to basically hear this shit, because realistically, why would you want to hear that? No one would want to hear that. And he's why would you need to play it? You don't need to play it. And I was just that offbeat moment, you could kind of tell the kind of tone that was basically going to be set for the show. And it's just that scene alone just basically set it off for me. And I was kind of okay, I kind of get the vibe of this. And yeah, that was a great scene. He's just getting kind of why would you do it? Because why would you need to play it if he's just there to kill the guy? Why do you need to play it? Yeah, this is fucking crazy. Anyway, so Barry's yeah, I know, it's cool or whatever. And the entire time there's another, in that same sequence, Fuchs is kind of Fuchs is basically his handler, and his handler, essentially played by Stefan Root, there's later stuff with him and his whole relationship and his whole background and stuff. Before the meeting, Fuchs is kind of like, oh yeah, tell him that you did something like some guy's nuts or something like that. And it's kind of like, why do you need to tell him that? Why do you feel the need to like bring that up? He's like, oh well, because like it'll show them how much of a badass you are or whatever. And then like Barry brings it up and he's like, oh yeah, I did something to this guy, screw it or whatever. And like, and they just kind of like look at him like what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Is he serious? Like what, we didn't need to know that. Like, okay, like cool, but thanks for sharing. But like, and it's just an awkward moment all around. Again, one of my like favorite parts from definitely one of my favorite parts from the season. Yeah. So so he goes to murder the guy, and so it's so funny how he falls into it because he's on a murder mission to actually kill this guy or whatever. He's gonna get it done. So I guess he's doing like recon. He's following him around town, and he ends up following him to an acting class or whatever, and that's where he meets Sally Reed, Sally Goldberg. Sarah Goldberg. Sarah Goldberg is the actress, and that's why she meets Sally Reed. And it's just the way they met. She's practicing for a scene on the steps, and it was just like brilliant timing on his part, where he just basically, because he kind of creeps up on her, and he's like, "Oh, you're practicing for a scene." And it's like, "Oh, and it's just very awkward." But so he follows her into the acting class, and she's giving a performance, and I think this is how it happens. I think she gives the performance, and he follows her into it. I can't exactly remember exactly how that happens. I think either way, he ends up in this class, and he ends up in the class, and he ends up seeing a performance, and I think it was her performance, and he becomes like so moved by her performance and what she's basically doing, that he becomes captivated by the art itself, and you can kind of see it in his face and see it in his eyes and see it in his glimmer. But the thing is, he becomes so distracted that he loses focus, and the guy that he's supposed to kill kind of creeps up on him. He's kind of like, "Hey man, how you doing?" Like, and it's kind of like for a hitman, if you think about it, if you're doing a hit or whatever, you're playing an actor, you're playing a hitman, you wouldn't necessarily want them to like know who you are, or for too many people to see your face. And he kind of creeps up on him, and you could see it in Barry's face. He's kind of like, "Oh shit!" Like, he's like, "Oh shit!" Like, you're not supposed to see me. Like, you're not supposed to like, and no, you're not supposed to like basically know who I am or whatever. And like, the guy, Ryan, I think he was going by Ryan Madison or whatever it is. That was his name, and he basically tells him that, he basically tells him that he doesn't have a partner to do the scene with, and somehow the hitman ends up in the actual acting class, and it's just hilarious. I think like how the entire time, like, he's supposed to be like trying to murder this dude, but like what happens is that he actually starts doing a stage play with him, and it's just, man, it's great. Yeah, so after the acting class though, they become all they go for drinks, they become all enthralled with this. He starts to become, he's falling in love with acting. Basically, that's what it is. He's falling in love with acting. He has like friends now, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think think I want to say up until this time, they start revealing a little bit more and more about his backstory, I think. I'm not too sure. And he apparently he's a killer, but also he has like some dark past of basically that he was in the war, and that's how he got, entangled with his handler in the first place, Fuchs, who contracts him to basically kill these people. And the entire time he believes that he's doing the right thing. He believes that he believes that he's only murdering or hurting bad people. And in that sense, it kind of, once even reading the plot just now, and once you get a sense of exactly who he is, and what the show is basically about, I kind of get those like, and if you guys out there have ever seen Dexter, you've seen Dexter before, you kind of probably know what I'm talking about. That sense of the hero or the main character, the protag is a murderer, but he's the main focus of the story. He's the main character of the story, and it just brings a very interesting dynamic, because he's felt like this entire time that he's had no purpose, or he wants to do a little bit more than being just a killer or just a murderer. And that's like when he starts becoming in love with acting. That's when he starts loving acting so much that he realizes that he's like, oh, I could do other things. I don't have to just be a killer. I don't have to just do these things or whatever. And he kind of, and the show goes on, or season 1, I think, goes on with him exploring that and basically trying to fight against what he's basically being not designed, but like what he's essentially being doing for a good chunk of his life, essentially. But yeah, that's, in a nutshell, that's a little bit of a synopsis of what Barry is, and of basically what season 1 essentially is sort of about. So one of the iconic things I think about this series is that all through the series, I want to talk about too, is like all through the season 1, he has these little it's the way the story is told, it's so interesting. He has these little clips of him being happy, essentially, or of him, like almost like you see into the future where he's already successful, he's already kind of made it, and in that sense, it's kind of being brought to light where it's a little bit like confusing, but yeah. I think I'll get to that a little bit later, though. I think I want to talk about essentially what happens in episode, at the end of this episode, basically at the end of episode 1. So the end of episode 1, he's like, okay, you're part. I think he kind of accepts that he's a killer, and he's gonna go through with a hit. He's gonna go and kill Ryan. He's gonna go and murder him or whatever it is. But at that point, the guys, the mobsters that he were working for were Russian, and they called them the Chechens inside of the show. And the Chechens basically have been following him, taking pictures of who he's been with, his girlfriend at the time, or his romantic interest, which is Sally, who I talked about. And he follows Ryan to this dark, like, road place. And he's like, I'm going to murder him. But the Chechens beat him there. So he opens his door to just basically go ahead and murder Ryan. He's like, oh, he's already dead. And it's kind of like, I just look on his face like, what the hell's going on? And he looks across the street and he sees the Chechens, basically, they've already done the hit or whatever it is. And Barry being, a ex-military, basically in the war and et cetera, et cetera. He's kind of like, don't point that gun at me, man. Don't point that gun at me. Don't point that gun at me. And he points the gun. And the mobster points the gun at him, and he shoots like 3 of them that's in the car. And NoHo Hank, the Victor Zsasz, he gets shot, but obviously, you know, it's Zsasz, guys. It's Victor Zsasz. He's got to get away, right? It's Zsasz. And he gets away, but the other guys, he shoots down. And Hank's, NoHo Hank gets shot, by the way, too. Like, Barry's not a slouch with a gun. He knows what he's basically doing. So he shoots them, and he takes them out like nothing. But the end of that episode is kind of like what happens where it's like, apparently the idiot had the camera in the car that of basically one of the Chechens had brought a camera with them, stupidly so, to videotape everything that basically was going on around them. And it looked like a fucking little like lipstick thing, and they call it the lipstick camera throughout the entire thing. It's fucking hilarious. It's great. But he stupidly recorded Barry basically taking shots at them and killing, basically trying to murder them or whatever it is. And he left it in the car. And when the police came, they investigated the crime scene and found video evidence of basically the murder happening. And the detective, that's when they start introducing the police element inside of the story. And this is where it delves deep into just some real like I said, like Dexter shit, like some real Dexter like stuff. And Janice Moss is a detective that's basically put onto the scene of Janice Moss is basically the I'm trying to see if I can find her name. So she's basically she's the lead detective on the scene, and Paula Newsome, and she does a great job, I think, at playing the detective on the scene. And she goes and, you know, finds the crime scene and decides that, you know, this has got to be linked to Ryan and his acting class and et cetera, et cetera. And that's when we jump into like episode 2, where we see basically like they're doing like a kind of like a memorial service kind of for Ryan. And they also interview Barry. All kind of things basically come into play when the police start to get like more active with the investigation and et cetera. But yeah, it's a crazy ride. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just looking through to see if I can. Yeah. So yeah, again, like it's just it's more of the darker comedy, but more of his journey of finding himself in terms of like what he wants to do, basically do differently in life. So as like the first episode ended or whatever, so now that the Chechens have tried to like assassinate Barry, it's like kind of like a full-on war, right? So the Chechens want Barry dead. Then Barry wants to basically kill the Chechens. So they're on basically high alert. And meantime, they are trying to crack the code of basically the camera that was in the car that's NoHo Hank stupidly brought to basically the hit. And one of the hilarious scenes is kind of like in every, I don't know if you guys have been like, I don't know if you guys have like been through this before. I'm sure everybody has, like, you know, like sometimes you have like so many passwords and like everybody uses like different like password capture things to essentially like keep track of these passwords these days or whatever it is. And but like if you're like anything like me, you have so many passwords and sometimes you can lose track of them and sometimes you basically can't recover them. And sure enough, the Janice takes the camera to the IT guys and they're trying to basically crack it or whatever it is. And she's like, well, why haven't you cracked it yet? Why haven't you done it or whatever it is? And they're kind of like, oh, well, we're waiting on this part, we're waiting on this part, we're waiting on this to do this or whatever. And the fucking hilarious thing is she's like, no, like, and being like an independent woman, you know what I mean? If you've seen it, you know, an independent woman. Oh, I'm an independent woman, I can do whatever I want. I was like, oh, here's what you do, here's how you crack it. She's gonna tell them how to do their job. That's just so fucking hilarious to me. She's gonna tell them how to do their job. And she's kind of like, okay, first we go 1111. And if that doesn't work, okay, then we go 1112. And 13. And she basically try to like brute force hack this thing, and she tries it about like 3 times, and sure enough, she gets fucking locked out of this thing. And I just thought that was so brilliant because it's like of course this would happen. Why wouldn't this happen? Like of course this would happen. Like why would and so they have to bring in a specialist, or they got to call the FBI to basically come in and try to crack this thing, essentially. And so after waiting for all this time, going through all this stuff, and trying to crack it, they eventually crack it and they get it open and they see the image, but the image is basically distorted. And she takes it to the acting class and she asks them basically that, you know, does this look familiar? Well, of course, it's a smudged up image. They're not gonna know what they're talking about. They're not gonna know what she's talking about, basically. Sorry. Yeah, but it's just it's a very silly thing. And again, in this episode, they started to interview like Barry and started to get like they try to get like suspects of who they possibly think it could be, and they base it off of height. And they're like, oh, this person's like 6'2". It's like, oh, Barry, you're 6'2", and there's some other guys in the class that are basically 6'2". But yeah, something that I loved though, what they did also with Barry is that like they planned. Like if he was there, like he's a true professional because like they planned if like obviously like if they were to ever get caught, he had like a number that he gave her, and they kind of did like the supernatural thing where it was kind of like he gave her a number and he called it, and it was a number that was linked. I guess like Fuchs had like a bunch of like suitcases stuffed with phones with different names on them, basically to so they could evade the police and like basically construct an alibi. I thought that was like. I just thought that was brilliant. Like, and I was like, I think it was almost like a callback to Supernatural, almost in a kind of sense. It was like, yeah, they did this shit on Supernatural, or you would essentially do this shit if you were like murdering people. I guess. Yeah. So, yeah, that basically was a synopsis of like, I think episode 2 of Barry, but episode 3, so Barry misses an acting class to honor an obligation to the detectives try to piece together the murder puzzle. Sally makes a mistake of during the audition. It turns to Barry for comfort. And this is when he basically sleeps with her. And it turns to Joyce when a legendary assassin arrives. And yeah, so at this point, the Chechens, right? So the Chechens had come back and the Chechens had come back and they captured Fuchs, and they were kind of like, okay, we need you to do this hit, Barry. And obviously like Barry goes out and he does the hit or whatever it is, but how they capture them is so fucking hilarious because the only reason that they got captured is because Fuchs Barry, again, he was enthralled with this girl. He's being captivated by this girl. He's falling in love, kind of like romantically interested in this girl or whatever it is. And so Sally calls him up and is like, oh yeah, blah, blah, can you do like a scene with me or something like that? And fucking, while this is happening, he's taking the phone call outside. Fuchs is like running for his life, like, and trying to fight back against these dudes because he doesn't want to get captured by them. And they are fucking him up. They are like really wailing into him. They are like, they're beating the shit out of him or whatever. And Barry's just like on the phone, like in love and like acting like everything is fine. And then like in the background, he's just like getting his ass kicked or whatever. And then like, so Barry's like, okay, he makes his plans to Sally and he goes back inside and like he gets a gun pointed to his head. And then they do a hard cut. And then they do a hard cut. And they do a hard cut. And they essentially, they do a hard cut and they essentially like cut to him, to Fuchs, just cussing Barry out. This is like, why the fuck didn't you hear me scared? What the fuck is wrong with you? Why the fuck didn't you respond? Barry's just like, I was on the phone. I don't know. Barry's like, I was on the phone. I don't know what you want me to do. I was like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, yeah, and it's again, like just like that classic humor. Yeah, so it's just good. Yeah, so around episode 4, Barry finds that escaping Fuchs and winning Sally's affection is harder than he thought. Yeah, it gets wild. I think like deeper into the episodes. Yeah. So, yeah. So that was episode. I think we skip episode 4. Episode 5. Barry looks to hit the reset button with Sally. Right, because after they slept together, she started being weird, and like girls obviously do, but sometimes, not all the times. Not all the times, guys, not all the times. Sometimes they get weird if it's a new girl, you know what I mean? But girls in general just doing their own thing or whatever, you know? But Barry looks to hit the reset button with Sally. And this is after the party, I think, they had that was like where these guys came over, and this is the introduction of like, yeah, like Taylor and man, the tones at which and the shifts at which this show makes is so crazy to me. It's so crazy to me. Like at one point they could be doing something really silly or something really funny, but like, and then it shifts and it gets like really serious. But anyway, this is the introduction of like Taylor, because they got to a party. This is after Sally had turned to him basically because she had a part and she didn't do very well in it or whatever. And then they slept together, they had sex, and like they somehow ended up at this party, and Barry essentially he thinks that they're together now. He thinks that they're together, that's his girl, etc., etc. And he basically sees her talking to this guy, and like he gets mad or whatever, and he's kind of like basically saying like, you're my girl, whatever, that she doesn't like it. And there's a whole back and forth there or whatever. But at the same time, he's talking to his friend, his old army buddy, and he Facebooks his old army buddy, and his old army buddy comes over to the party, and he brings friends, and he gets introduced to Taylor and this other guy, who essentially are Marines as well, and they're just roughhousing and they're causing a ruckus at this party. It's not good, genuine company to essentially be around. And this entire time, you gotta remember, like, Barry's supposed to be out there on the hunt, murdering certain people, you know? And Fuchs is still like, at this point, I think, making buddy-buddy with the mobster. But yeah, Barry finds himself in a quandary after teaming up with some people. Chapter 6. Listen with your eyes. Barry tries to fly solo at a remote airship, but Taylor still wants in. Baka looks at exact revenge on the man who killed his brother. Displays Pazar's hands off others. Moss tries to end her association with Jean, but finds herself drawn to his class at the criminal juncture. So Sally lobbies lobbies for a major acting challenge. Yeah, it's so it's kind of crazy, the synopsis for for chapter 6, I was just reading it. It's just kind of crazy how they go from like 0 to 60, like I said, because the entire time, like Brian's having this party or whatever, whatever it is with them, and the next day, Sally tries to like it says, like tried to be like they try to do like a reset with Sally, where it's kind of like they wanted to pretend like in there.
Bit of technical. Boy. Okay, there we go. A little bit of a technical difficulty there. But all good. All right. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway. Yeah. And so they're at the party, and like at this party, Taylor finds out what Barry's doing. Finds out that he's a hitman. Finds out that he is getting paid money for it, getting paid very well for it, and he essentially says that he basically wants in. And he essentially says that he wants in, and Fuchs finds out about it. Fuchs is basically furious. He's fuming at the fact or the idea of essentially that they basically know that what he's doing, they basically know that he is a part, that he knows that he's basically a hitman. And Fuchs's solution is just like, well, you gotta kill him too. It's just take him out. And they were planning on doing a raid of this shipment for this rival gang for the Chechens or whatever it is. And essentially, it was a raid. It was like a whole warehouse full of people. And I was kind of like, well, how exactly is Barry gonna do this? How exactly is he planning on essentially it didn't make sense to me, taking on an entire building with just one guy. And I was thinking well, maybe that Taylor guy can essentially help him, so maybe this isn't necessarily a bad thing. And sure enough, yeah, he could help him, but that whole part, he might as well take the help. The whole part about him taking him out at the end, that was kind of a little bit sketchy. So anyway, they go into this warehouse and with the Marine Taylor, and they essentially start to take this place, and he's pretty good. Taylor's pretty good. He's helping them out. They're getting guys. But the thing, they're murdering people. They're taking them out, and they're clearing the stash house. But the thing that is so hilarious with this was that when they go to raid the stash house, he's you can tell like he's like zoned out. Taylor's like not zoned out. He's like he's not being very cooperative or whatever. He's not like establishing like Barry so he's like the leader or whatever it is. And they're in the stash house and they're like, all right, we just took out some guys and now we're gonna take out some more guys. And like it's like we just gotta be stuffy about it. I said, I'm gonna go first, and then out of nowhere, Taylor's just like Leroy Jenkins, and I'm just like, what the fuck is that? I was like, okay, and it's that moral. It makes you question, I guess, like that moral instinct within yourself. It's kind of like, should this really be a thing? Should this really not really be a thing, but like should this really be like should this really be like whose side should you really be on? Should you really be on the side of Fuchs who's just like, yeah, maybe just get rid of this hothead who's like out of control, or should you be on the side of just like, well, maybe he's out of control, but like Barry's basically trying to get out of this. He doesn't want to be a killer anymore. He doesn't want to be a hitman anymore. He just wants to be an actor. He wants to stop doing the killing, you know? But series of unfortunate events, Barry finds himself getting knocked in the head. Basically, he gets knocked out. So knocks him over the head and like, you know? And he gets knocked out, but like Taylor sweeps the place. He takes out all the guys. He clears the building amazingly so, and I'm just kind of like in my head, like, fuck you, really? I don't think that's possible, but whatever. So he takes out the guys, and they find this hoard of money in the stash house. And Taylor's kind of like, yeah, man, check this out. Like, yeah, we got this whole thing. And he's like, he's the typical jarhead army dude who's just like, yeah, we can do this. Yeah, oh. And his character is just so. It's not as bad as like some other characters that we meet down the line within the series, but like, it's very annoying, and yeah, it's super duper annoying, and like. Barry considers killing him towards the end. It's a perfect moment to like murder this guy and take him out and be done with him. And I mean, considering what happens next in the next episode, I think he probably should have done it, honestly. But like, he doesn't do it, and he basically the way they play it is that Barry walks in to the hotel where Fuchs is staying, and he's kind of like, "Hey, Fuchs, what's going on?" Fuchs is so happy to see him, and it's great. And he's like, "Great, I understand and I'm so sorry about Taylor. You had to do it, blah blah, whatever." And then Taylor walks in like 5 seconds later, and he's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm Taylor." And Taylor's like doing this typical stupid like high five thing, kind of like Corey and those two idiots from Trailer Park Boys. And he just like kind of like to give a high five or whatever. And Fuchs just kind of looks at him like, "What the fuck? Like, he's still alive?" Like, oh man. But yeah. Essentially that's what it is. Yeah, so then we reach episode 7. And in episode 7 is where episode 6 actually. Well, because they get wind of another job that they need to do. And the job is basically to anticipate the guys that the stash house that the detective went over after the guy that the stash house had. They went after I don't want to say Colombians, like the Colombians or whoever it was, the stash house, right? And that ended up being essentially, that ended up being essentially someone else's stash house. Either way, they planned on murdering the guy. They planned on murdering the guy who owned the stash house because he was coming into LA to figure out like what was going on with his shipment, what was going on with his thing, and they essentially had this whole plan of taking this guy out, taking him out when he landed. And Barry's like, okay, we're gonna prop up, right? We're gonna wait for him, right? And Taylor's like, yeah, we're gonna prop up. We're gonna wait for this guy to show up, basically, essentially. And he's just like agreeing with him. And like the entire time we know, like he's not gonna do it. And Barry tries to call the guy before this goes down. And it just amazes me how he completely ignores him. He brings his other army friend to the raid or whatever it is, and he brings the guy, one of the first guy who he had friended on Facebook, who he's not really an army guy. He's more of a chill dude, and he wasn't really. He puts it he was in logistics, so he's not really like a jarhead like the rest of them. He's not like a hoo-ha kind of guy. He's more like a guy behind the computers, and he has a kid and a wife, and they're basically a life. And it's kind of like Barry tries to warn him to get out of the car while they're all driving over there to basically do this hit. Because at that point you would think like he would know basically what the fuck's happening, what the fuck's going on, right? But they clearly didn't tell him. They clearly didn't tell him what the hell was going on, or what the essentially what the deal was. And the episode basically ends with them getting geared up, getting all hyped up to go and basically murder these people that are flying in. But stupidly, they announced their arrival with blasting some really metal shit and driving towards them. And before they can even get close enough to murder these guys, they get shot at. And the car flips over with Barry and basically this guy who's a civilian inside, and the two guys up front, Taylor, they die. Taylor and his friend, the other guy that was in front, they die immediately after the car slipped over. I think this is more towards episode 7 though. But yeah. It's crazy. Essentially in episode 7 is where basically after the shootout, they are trying to escape from the airplace, and one of the guys, the Colombian guys, go after them, and they try to, and he's basically got a gun on Barry, and the civilian guy that is chill or whatever has he essentially he essentially is nowhere to be found, but until Barry starts saying something. And he's like, I guess the other guy, the Colombian guy, couldn't really understand because he didn't really understand English. But the civilian guy walks up behind the Colombian guy and he has a gun on him and he's like, come on, man, shoot him. And you can tell he didn't want to shoot him. You can tell he didn't want to do it. You can tell he's never done that before. But Barry was going to die, and so he convinced him to, he kind of did push him a little bit to shoot him. And he did. And after he shoots him, you can see it in his face, he's basically destroyed. But Barry pulls him along and he takes his motorcycle, the Colombian motorcycle, and they basically drive off and they escape. And I think later in that episode too, that guy comes back and he starts complaining basically about how he can't take it anymore. He can't live like this. He can't keep lying. Essentially, he told his wife, they meet up, right? And he keeps calling because he kept calling Barry. He kept calling Barry, and he's like, you know what, man? Like, I need to talk. And essentially, Barry eventually gets in and they meet. And he starts crying and freaking out. Like, I mean, like, hardcore freaking out, guys, about how he can't live like this, about how he murdered someone. And it just got, like, and this comedy about, and I know I've been basically talking about the badass things that they've been doing and all the killing and etc. But, like, this comedy is still, like, this comedy, dark comedy, it just got, like, really, 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 like, really serious real fast. And we start to see the extent at which he will kill, and the extent at which Barry has no problem murdering. When the guy who was a civilian basically says that, like, you know what, I can't live like this. He says, I can't live like this. I can't be like this. I can't be like this way. I gotta turn myself in. And the second he said that, I was kind of like, man, like, you're not, I don't think that that's the wisest of choices, because honestly, like, I don't think that's the wisest of choices. He should have said that, because if hey, you're in that situation, would you really, like, I mean, with this killer, and he knows, he's seen everything that Barry's done, and they know everything that Barry's done. And he basically admits to Barry that, you know, he's a hitman. And Barry's like, you gotta keep calm, man. But, like, no, like, you're a fucking hitman. Like, he starts freaking out. Like, normal, like, everybody normally, I feel like they would do. But, yeah, like, he starts freaking out. But you wouldn't admit to him, like, you know, no, screw it, I'm going to the police, I don't care what you say. Yeah, you wouldn't do that. Yeah, you wouldn't do that. But he did. And, well, essentially he did. And he ended up paying a very heavy price with it with his life. Because Barry, and again, like, that's the one, like, it's so interesting because we've seen Barry kill on the show. We've seen him shoot people or whatever. But as he puts it, he still feels like he's justified in these killings so far. But this one essentially looks like it was definitely harder on him than it was, because Barry in the end shoots him in the car, because he threatened to go to the police, and he said that he would go to the police. And I mean, you can see, and this honestly makes Bill Harder such a great actor. You can see it within him that he's physically frustrated with his face and his body language and everything. He really didn't want to do that. He didn't want to kill him. He really didn't want to kill him. Because all this time, if you remember, his business so far is he's only killed, even you see his struggle within him to not murder Taylor, and that's why he didn't kill Taylor. Even Taylor, who had his attitude was very off book, and I mean, like, I don't want to say it was more justifiable, or seemed like it would have been more justifiable to murder Taylor over than him, but I just feel like he was more of a civilian, and I guess that's why I painted it more in that light of basically, like, why it might have been easier to kill Taylor, because he's more in the shit. He's more ready to go and fight and do etc. and X, Y, and Z. But someone that's more, I guess, like, closer to a civilian from my perspective, or to my perspective of him killing him, and him, you can see it within him, like, he really didn't want to do that. It kind of like humanized him, I want to say, a little bit more. You can tell what he's really about, kind of. Anyway, we cut back to the show, the scene that of Macbeth with Sally that he's essentially supposed to be doing, and he's essentially supposed to be in a play with her, and he shows up. And he's reminiscing these feelings that he's been having, or the feelings that he is having about murdering his friends. This guy was his friend. He was a friend of him on Facebook. He was at the party with him. He was his friend. And he starts remembering those feelings, and he starts channeling it into the character for Macbeth, even though it was not one line. He starts channeling it into that character. And she starts to feel Sally feels exactly the realism that comes from that character, and she's basically able to build off of that. But psychologically, if you think about it, and it's psychologically from the perspective of what he's just been through, what he's had to go through to actually get to that point, it's damaging. It was damaging, and it was brilliant writing, first of all, from the perspective of like plot and etc. But really, really damaging for him as in his psyche. But overall, like, really good episode. And by that time, you're in. Like, I feel like with this show, you're in. Like, this is pretty awesome. So that basically is what happens there. Toward the season finale, season finale, episode 8. Essentially, what happens is that towards episode 8, we have Bazaar, that's what the guy's name, by the way, who is the head of the Chechens at the time, you know, the Russian mob or whatever it is. It was in the story. He was essentially planning on killing Fuchs, because Fuchs came back, and him and Barry at this point were basically fighting, and he was trying to basically give up Barry. And instead of willing to work along with Fuchs, they capture him, and see, here's the part of the dark comment that comes in. Like, Bazaar basically tells Barry to Bazaar essentially tells Barry sorry, kind of blanket here, guys. Bazaar basically tells Barry to he's not Barry, but he basically tells one of his minions to basically to kill Fuchs. And the thing that happens is that it all happens in, like, it's so funny because it happens in Russian. He hears the buzzsaw in the background or whatever, and Victor Zaz, the Noho Hank, he goes to warn Barry, and he's like, "Yo, Barry, like, these guys are coming after you because they kind of like a friendship now. These guys are coming after you, etc., etc. It's like you should be like you should know that you probably won't see Fuchs again." It's like, okay, cool, whatever. Because at that point, him and Fuchs were basically fighting, and they were basically done. And what happens is that, like, the entire time, there's buzzsaw in the background. There's a buzzsaw in the background, and you can hear the buzzing. And you think that, okay, well, that's the end of Fuchs. Fuchs is being a dick to Barry anyway. So, like, it's like, at that point, at least for me, I was like, no harm, no foul. So, this entire time, they cut away, and I think they had another scene of Barry, and they cut back. And, like, Bazaar enters the room. And he's kind of like, what? Fuchs isn't dead yet? Like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, wait a minute. And again, this is all happening. It's like, I built a torture, I forget what those things are called. in the medieval times, they had like a thing where they would hold a person's like neck and arms. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's pillory. It's a pillory. God, you're doing something new every day, guys. So it's called a pillory. So he starts building a fucking pillory made out of wood. So it's not cute being hacked up with the buzzsaw or whatever it is. It's this creation of this pillory. And he starts creating it. And it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, why isn't he dead yet? He's like, oh, I'm gonna create the pillory. So when he's in there, he's gonna be like, help me, and then I'm gonna chop him up or whatever. And he's like, no, enough of the theatrics, just kill him. Just kill him. And he turns on the saw or whatever, and he's like, and he stops. He's like, you really told me I could do whatever I wanted, you told me I could do my own thing. And it's so funny because he's fighting over like how to like murder him, and it's kind of like, and he's kind of like, you know what? No, this is how we do it or whatever. And this is how you murder someone in America or whatever. And he pulls the gun on him. This is about to pull the gun down. It's like, bam. Barry shoots him in the head. And he has that moment of where he loses all reflexes and he's throwing his arm around or whatever it is. And essentially, Barry's able to kill everybody basically in the garage where they were holding Fuchs. And he saves Fuchs. And they escape together and they get out of there or whatever it is. And it's a satisfying ending in terms of like moving on to the next chapter. But that whole creating a pillory thing so then I could torture him and then murder him. Just absolutely insane to me. Just is rather silly in my opinion. But yeah. And so the season ends and it wraps up in a nice little bow where the Chechens are now being led by Victor Zsasz, no rank. And Barry is still acting in the acting class, and they had pinned or associated the murder of the Ryan with the Chechens. So they thought that he was working with basically the drug mafia or whatever, the Russian drug mafia. And essentially they tie up all the bows there. But again, a fun little series. It's so good. The jokes in here are funny. It's drama and comedy all at the same time. It's really, really good.
On review, Barry, Season 1, receives a 4 out of 5.
Thank you so much, guys, for listening to the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Remember to follow us on all the social media things, the Facebook, the Instagram, and Twitter. Specifically Twitter, follow us at OnReviewCast. And hopefully you guys can tune into the next episode. It's going to be Barry Season 2. It's going to be awesome. And lastly, just before I go, just remember, be safe, be kind, be you. Take care.